When you don't take time to look at it through other people's eyes. Take some time and reflect on what you believe in your soul. Cause that is the key to life. You gotta let the negativity go.
Hi, What the Foxers. Thank you so much for tuning in to What the Fox podcast. We want to remind you that today's episode is sponsored by Therapy Appointment. Therapy Appointment is the practical tool for starting, growing, and managing a practice. Therapy Appointment was built for therapists by therapists.
Hello, and welcome to the What the Fox podcast with your two hosts, Lindsey Fox and Amber Ross. Here on What the Fox, we deconstruct social norms to build better lives. And in today's episode, we are going to be talking, I know, dun, 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 dramatic pause. No, we're going to be talking about boundaries, healthy boundaries, and what that could look like going through, and coming out of the holiday season.
Yes, because we all know that the holidays are when people love to test our limits. They
100%,
just
yes.
love to test our limits. They like to see how much can we poke the bear.
I know. And then, you put yourself in all these situations and almost always you're already overtired. You're already overstressed. You're already you've built up this idea of what's going to happen. So it just becomes a recipe for disaster in holiday settings.
Ding, ding, ding. It's so true. And so really this kind of came about because in a previous episode, I had mentioned something like, oh, we should talk about the 3 different types of boundaries.
Yep.
And so here we are. So let's get into it.
Doing the dang thing like we said we would. Imagine that.
Yep, that's
So
right.
weird.
That's exactly right. So funny enough, before we pressed record today, just before we get into the 3 different types of boundaries, Amber was volunteering for something festive over at her kids' school and started off by saying, what, Amber? What did you say?
I said, 5 and 6-year-olds don't have boundaries, don't understand boundaries, and don't they can't respect boundaries because of it. And I witnessed this a lot, and not in a way that anybody did anything that offended me, but it was just interesting to watch them interact with each other and how close they were in proximity to each other and how close they were to me.
Yeah,
it was
personal space.
Yeah, it doesn't exist. And
yeah, nope. Mm-mm.
It really doesn't. And it's mind-blowing because when my children do it, it does not even occur to me that it's happening. Yeah. It is nothing for me to walk around the house with one child attached to my back pocket and the other child attached to my shirt or something,
Yeah.
But it became very obvious in the classroom setting when I'm sitting with these kids and watching them sit on each other's feet or sit on each other's hands. And I'm like, hey, that can't feel good.
Although personal space is totally a boundary that I want us to get into today, particularly whenever it comes to the holidays and kids. Because I feel this is definitely, and I don't mean to kick us off and starting with this,
no,
but
please
I do
go
want
for
to
it.
Circle back to it at least. But it's just, a lot of times with holidays, you are seeing family members that either you do see on a regular basis, or maybe you don't. Maybe you just see them once a year, but then you're saying oh, make sure you go greet Uncle so-and-so or Grandma so-and-so and give them a hug.
Nope.
Make sure you give them a kiss goodbye.
Negative.
And right. So, I mean, maybe this is a more, advanced new age way of parenting. I am not a parent, so let me be clear in saying that. But
you know what? You deal with kids a lot, and it's something that I really appreciate about you, because I'm going to pull this back to one of the first times that you came over to the house with the kids. And I don't remember if you were leaving or entering the house, but you asked Hazel if you could give her a hug. And that stood out to me because I never force my children to hug people. I ask them to acknowledge a person, to be respectful that a person is in their presence, but that doesn't
say hello, give a fist bump, high five, air five, whatever.
Yeah. Or just a wave like that. You do not have to physically touch someone to acknowledge their existence. But that stood out so much to me because I was like, oh, thank you. Thank you for not just invading her space without requesting permission. That's meaningful to me.
Mm-hmm. And that's what made me think of it. And thank you, Amber, for bringing that up. But to your point, right, 5 and 6-year-olds, they don't have personal boundaries. But that's why as we as adults, it's our responsibility to be trauma informed and mindful as a whole that it's important to role model that we
Mhm.
should invite children to have their own opinion on whether or not they want to be touched. And if
Ooh,
it's a,
kids get to have opinions.
oh, Lindsey Amber. I love that expression of like straight out of the mouths of babes because it's so true. They will say
It
whatever the
is.
heck they want. So, all right. So with that, I wanted to start off by just talking about the three different types of boundaries so that we can at least talk about what they look like and then sort of expand from there in terms
Yeah.
of what, maybe communication techniques or things that you can say to, make your boundaries a little bit more assertive or whatever.
Yeah.
So, in terms of an overview, I would like to just say there are porous boundaries, porous meaning like a sponge.
Mhm.
There are healthy boundaries, which is more of like an assertive, direct, straightforward approach. And there are rigid boundaries, which is like
Mm.
super duper firm, really inflexible, that sort of thing.
That's the no period or like no stop or like the am I
So
correct
just
in thinking that?
let's start with porous. Let's
Okay.
start with porous boundaries first, because it's sort of, if we think of this on a spectrum, we've got porous boundaries on one end of the spectrum, and then we've got the rigid boundaries on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. Whereas the
Okay.
healthy boundaries are somewhere in between in the middle. But the porous boundaries are definitely when people lack boundaries, whether it be regard to personal space, but also like emotional space. And they might be the type of individual that overshares really soon or lets people
Mm.
in really soon.
Yeah.
Um, they let like almost anyone get close to them without having established trust or rapport. So maybe just as a whole, overly trusting to strangers.
Yeah. Hey, that used
um,
to be me. It happens.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I used to be that person
Yeah.
too. I definitely used to be that person. And having a difficult time saying no to people also used to be me. I would say yes whenever I really meant no. um,
Yeah.
s-
Your no thank you sounds a lot like a sure.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And it's funny. That's such a good point too, because I feel now whenever I hear people, if I hear someone say sure, or if I sense just an inkling of a hesitation, I will restate the question and just make sure we're on the same page. Or I heard you say sure. Or do you mean yes, or do you mean no?
Yeah. It's
And
funny
so I'll
because
be
you've
very,
done that to me a lot. And I'm like, why is she asking me this question again? And I don't like with you, we have a very healthy communication pattern. And I don't think
we
we
have
run into
healthy
these.
boundaries.
Yeah. And we're super respectful with each other. So
Yeah.
it's funny when I say sure, I haven't previously thought of that word as like a boundary conundrum, like you just pointed
Yeah.
out. So that all
And
the
you
lights
know
are
what?
firing.
In all fairness, maybe it's not an all or nothing type of, thing. There can be times where you're just like straight out don't care. And it's like, sure, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't
Why
really
not?
have an opinion. Whatever.
Well, and yeah, kind of like the thumbs up means different things to different people.
Oh yeah, that too. Um, about that. So Amber hates that. Side note: if you give her a thumbs up emoji, she just kind of wants to kill you because it's sort of like telling someone go screw.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
like the middle finger, not your thumb. So every time I
yeah.
see that, like I have this, what did I do? Why
Which
are you mad at me?
So
Like,
speaking of, for our listeners, I totally want to know if you guys have the same sort of thought process about this, because after Amber shared this with me, I have been very now I will heart things in the text instead of using the thumbs up. And then if I screw up and use the thumbs up, I'm like, oh shit, there, gotta go correct it. But I say this because I brought this up to a friend of mine in jest, and she was like, oh, Lindsey, yeah, the thumbs up, that's totally like an F you to somebody. I was
see,
like,
it's not just me. I promise.
I had no idea. Sorry, I have
That's
not
so
been meaning
funny.
that.
Yes. So,
Um,
listeners, please tap in. Tell us, do you feel like a thumbs up is like a middle finger, or are we, the rest of us, just looking into that a little bit too much? And it's just simply a way of saying, got it.
oh boy, so funny.
I
Well,
love it.
yeah. So speaking of the thumbs up, that also feeds into the porous boundary piece in the sense that people with porous boundaries tend to be really passive with their communication, like
Mm.
super passive with their communication. So to the extent where like they're not asserting their personal values in the decision making or in the response of something, particularly whenever it comes to celebrating the holidays, we see this all the time of us not asserting our personal values and communicating passively.
Yeah, well, and that's the struggle, right? Because this is where the quote unquote martyr comes in, right? Like you go and you do the thing, even though you're uncomfortable, even though you don't want to be there, even though it upsets you, even though it stresses you out. And then you almost feel like, I don't want to say vindicated, but it's like, I did this for you and now you're ungrateful. And it like spins out this whole other
Hmm.
issue. Like
Oh,
that's what came to mind when
yes.
you said that.
Great point. So you mean when we're communicating passively and acting passively, we are then establishing premeditated resentments because we're choosing to do something that we don't want to do, and then we're going to get pissed off at the person because we chose to do it.
Yeah,
That
that's a
sounds
whole
about right.
cycle that's really unhealthy, just in case anybody was wondering.
Oh man, this is like the crazy making behavior that we as humans put ourselves through. And it's like when you simplify it like that, it's like, wow, why did I just do that?
Well, and it's funny because, okay, we explain it like that and we chuckle a little bit and we roll our eyes, but so many of us do this to ourselves without
Yes.
the realization that it is happening. And we need
Yeah.
to take that time to say, oh, I put myself here. Like,
Yep.
I did this
Hmm.
to me. I put myself in this situation.
Yep.
Ah, I could fix
Yeah.
this.
And especially whenever it comes to the holidays, I feel that we get really hung up on tradition because
Mm.
that goes into family values. But it is important to take a step back and say, wait, is it a tradition or is it an obligation? I mean, am I doing this because I want to do this, or am I doing this because I feel like I have to do this? And now I'm
Yeah.
going to drag my kids over to do it with me and teach them that this is what they should do is, do the things you don't want to do, including hugging, Uncle Johnny.
Yeah.
I mean, like, whatever.
Well, and
Um,
so many things, right? Like I think I'm going to speak from a motherhood standpoint here. When we look at holiday season and all of the um keeping up with the Joneses mentality, like, oh,
mm,
this family did the pumpkin patch and they did the other thing and they did the hay rides and they did that and then they saw Santa and they did
yeah.
the
And they're
train ride and
posting
they
it all
did
online. Yep.
right. And it's like, well, I didn't do any of that. I'm a bad mom, which spoiler alert, not true. Like you can pick and choose the things you want to participate in. You do not have to participate in all of the things, especially if it costs you your sanity, your budget, all of
Personal
the
peace.
personal peace. Yeah. And I mean,
Yeah.
we're all already overtired going into the holidays a lot of the time. You don't have to put that kind of pressure on yourself to do
That's right.
something just because someone else
Yep.
said that was the thing.
Yeah. So definitely a part of, and this is kind of where we kind of segue into like the healthy aspect of
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
things, but saying no to things that feel like obligations
Mm,
rather than feeling fun. It is
yep.
okay for you to establish new traditions and new family values for your family. And even if you do not have an identified family, you can choose your family, your friend
Yeah.
group, and that person that you want to call whenever it's, 10 o'clock at night and you're just having like a bad night. That's your family. Choose your family. You don't have to hang out with people you don't want to be around.
Nope.
Another huge part of Nope.
Full
Nope.
stop. Nope.
Yep,
Well,
not at all.
and
Keep the
it's,
traditions you enjoy, but don't make
yes.
yourself do things that are not soul fulfilling.
Yes, I agree with you there. And it's important to the part you said that speaks to me is that you have the power, you are empowered to create new traditions. Just because it's never been
Yeah.
done doesn't mean that it's not something you can create now.
Yep.
And it becomes a
Absolutely.
tradition because you say it is.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, there was I cannot remember all the ins and outs of this, but I do remember a family where their tradition was actually opening all of their Christmas gifts before Christmas so that they could just spend Christmas Day together as a family.
That's fun.
Just so
Yeah.
so that it wasn't about waking up early for Santa and, rushing to crash and open gifts and then, having things be a certain way, but rather let's open up all the gifts before Christmas and just enjoy each other's company.
Yeah.
Like, let's eliminate the must fuss and who has to be at what house when and just sort of enjoy each other.
Yeah, I agree. And I know I grew up in a family that every Christmas morning we got up super early in the morning because our tradition was to get up early and then drive to Virginia and then drive back to North Carolina and visit like 2 or 3 different houses in North Carolina.
Oh,
And it was like a whole day of
it's awful.
um
Sorry to hear
like
that.
I had a lot of fun memories doing that, and it was like as a
You weren't
child with
driving.
no responsibility. Yeah, I was not driving. I was not orchestrating any of this. Like my poor parents, I can't
I
imagine the
know.
stress they were under to pull this off.
I mean, it's so much
And
stress.
like I can remember telling my parents when I had Hazel, I was like, "Hey, so we're not going to participate in that. Like Christmas morning is going to be at our house. I'm not going to anyone's house on Christmas Day." And it has been
Love
a
it.
rule for 6 years now, 7 years now, however many, that I don't leave the house on Christmas Day. Anybody is
Good.
welcome to come into my house. I'm happy to feed you and have snacks and like all the things.
Count me in.
Right. Come on over, man.
Yep.
And it was the best gift I could have given myself. And it felt
Yeah,
so selfish to set that boundary.
I bet.
Like
I bet it did.
that was one of those moments where I was like, oh, this makes me feel like a crap person. But at the same
Yeah.
time, I was like, we
Yeah.
need this. Like this
Yeah.
needs to be a new tradition for us. And
I love
it
that.
feels good now that I'm several years into it and we've established our own traditions and we still see
Yeah,
family, we still hang
of
out with
course.
people.
I
But
think that's a
it's
wonderful tradition. I mean, that's a beautiful thing because to your point, like, you've got young kids and y'all have to do all it's just especially if if you do not have children or your children are all grown, it's a lot easier to kind of maneuver and travel and go places and do things. But when you've got really young kids like that, it's a lot to put on a family, frankly.
yeah. My
Um,
my poor parents is all I have to say. Love them.
yeah.
They did an amazing job creating beautiful memories, but man, that
No,
is just that's a lot.
yeah, that's pretty aggressive. That's pretty intense. But I mean, kudos to them for making it work. Which I kind of want to switch over then to like the more rigid
Yeah.
boundaries. Before we talk about the healthy, like I kind of feel like this is like the Goldilocks and Three Bears. It's like the too hot, too cold, and just right type of thing.
That makes
The
sense.
the rigid boundaries are definitely like whenever it's like too hot, when someone's just like hella firm. Honestly, the people with super rigid and inflexible boundaries are typically the individuals that have probably been really deeply, not to say it's not the opposite on porous, but very
Mm,
deeply hurt individuals
yeah.
where perhaps they started to get their voice back and started to feel empowered and learning how to say no, but then takes it to the nth degree of
Yeah.
like having highly inflexible boundaries, and they're very untrusting of others. They keep everyone kind of at a distance, very guarded in their communication. They don't want to unveil any kind of personal information about themselves or how they're doing or what they're up to. Um, and they probably say no to people all the time.
Mm,
So rather than the porous boundaries where it's like they don't say no, the rigid
yeah.
boundaries is they say no to everything because that feels a lot safer.
Feels safer, but it's also super isolating and very lonely.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, these individuals tend to be very detached from others' problems as a whole, because they just really just that's just it. They remove themselves from people because being away from everyone is safer and
Yeah.
feeling more in control. As we just had an episode all about control recently. Um,
Yeah.
Rigid boundaries make it, gives this pseudo effect of being in control of lots of things.
Yeah, well, you certainly
When
limit the surprises, right? You limit
Yeah.
your exposure to I don't
Hmm.
want to say trauma, but you limit your exposure to stress or other
Sure.
people's things, but
But
not
it can
but
also,
at the expense of your own sanity. I mean,
well, I would say even like sense of human connection at the expense of
yeah.
like human connection. And that's just it, is that these individuals have generally speaking, such a distrust toward humanity, towards others, that, being in isolation feels safer, ignoring other people's problems, ignoring other people's opinions, and just staying very rigidly fixed and like, nope, this is how it is. This is how it's going to be. So don't even try to, like just being very
Yeah,
hardwired and very fixed in one way of thinking.
that makes
Um,
sense.
where like maybe they communicate very aggressively, where they have very inflexible personal values, which I want to say, yes, our values matter and it's okay to stand strong in your values, but being like super duper inflexible, like, nope, this is how it is. It's like this because I said so,
Right.
and this is how it's got to be. It's just the absence of compromise, the absence of working together for cohesion, and just being very firm in that. Not fun.
Yeah, and I mean, I like the Goldilocks idea because it puts them into categories for me, and we've already decided that I like categories, and most people's brains do. But I feel like I've been on the receiving end of folks with that really rigid boundary style, and it feels very painful and very isolating for the other person too. Like,
Mhm.
and that can be a hard area to navigate with someone that is a friend of yours or is a companion of yours. And being careful and also mindful of your own boundaries and your own
Yeah.
situation.
I mean, I can tell you outright, I have been on all three of these.
Yeah.
I have been on the porous side, the rigid side, and now in my life, I'm happy to report that I'm on the healthy side. But I
You're
will
doing
say,
great.
thanks, girl. It's been a journey. I have to tell you, the
Whew.
healing journey and the healing struggles are so real. But rigid boundaries, as someone who used to have a lot of rigid boundaries, it's not coming from a place of wanting to inflict harm on others,
Yeah.
but rather it's coming from a place of I need to protect myself because I don't trust others,
Yeah.
or having the expectation that, that person is simply not going to understand or be able to support me in the way that I need. So let me put up these really big walls all around me to prevent any kind of additional, hurt from
Well,
happening.
people can't let you down if you never expect anything from them, right?
And if you don't open the door, right, you keep the
Right.
door shut, you
Right.
don't really, I
Oh,
mean,
you just reminded me. I saw this quote. Thank you for that. I love you.
you're welcome. Sure. Love you too.
I saw this quote online. So as it often happens, when you and I talk about a topic, it's suddenly everywhere I look, which I love. But I found this quote that said, "Walls keep everyone out, boundaries teach people where the door is." And it's Mark Groves.
Mm,
And I was like, yes, like that's such a great explanation of what a boundary is because sometimes they can feel uncomfortable. Sometimes they can
mhm.
feel isolating or hard or challenging, but it really
Yeah,
is just setting up that gatekeeper situation to say, this is the acceptable way to interact with me. This
that's
is
right.
like the healthy way to interact with me. Please respect my boundaries. So thinking of it as that door or that gate versus that wall was really helpful for me when I was looking at this.
Beautifully stated. I love that, Amber. I mean, I do say a lot, boundaries teach people how to treat us. And
Mhm.
it is our responsibility to, number one, learn what our needs are. And then number two, learning how to state our needs so that we give an opportunity to another person to try to help get our needs met. And if we're not being forthcoming with that, then we can anticipate there's going to be a lot of letdown, feelings of resentment, and, adhering to obligations rather than enjoying fun traditions.
Well, and I would also say, words are important and advocating for yourself is important. Another side of that is practicing those boundaries with yourself and leading by example in how you interact with yourself, right? Because yes, we teach people how to interact with us by our words, but
Yeah.
they're looking at our actions and
Yes.
how we treat ourselves.
Love that you're bringing this up. Love that you're bringing this up.
I mean, I have to, especially like I think about in my wellness community, right? We focus on putting ourselves on our to-do list, right? So putting
Yeah.
our needs and making sure they may not be at the top of the list, especially at the beginning of your journey or wherever you are in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
But like when you think of the things that you need to prioritize and take care of, you have to be on the list somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yep. 100%. And this could look like putting on your to-do list. It could be care task. I mean,
Yeah.
it could be if you are the busy person or parent who is constantly putting yourself last on the list, that could look like washing your hair, taking a shower, doing the
Yep.
dishes, brushing your teeth. I mean, these they could be everyday care tasks. Um, I know for me, some care task might include being proactive with certain things rather than waiting until the last minute. So
I'm not
I
going to
have a,
comment on that. I
yeah,
said,
I'm very bad at procrastinating because I'm so good at it.
I know, I know. And Eric and I were talking about that the other day because he works so well under pressure, we'll say.
Uh-huh.
So he
Yeah.
too does the procrastination thing.
Yeah.
And he said, but I just feel so accomplished when I can get it done. Like it's this big looming thing, and then I get it done, and it's that moment.
And a little hit of dopamine or something. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I got that.
You're
And
like,
it's
I
like,
did the thing.
hey, it totally resonates and I get it. And it's like super self-sabotaging at the same
Yes.
time.
Because
So,
that's so stressful. You put yourself under an intense amount of stress and worry and anxiety, and like one small misstep and the house of cards comes crashing down, right?
for real, exact. And especially, this is what I think adds to the anxiety with all the holidays for people
Mm.
too. It's like, the travel to and from where you're staying, who you're staying with, for how long, and then Christmas shopping. So then we get into financial boundaries, which like there's so many other, there
Yes.
are different types of boundaries, like specific types within each type, but I mean, financial boundaries. If you cannot afford to get everyone a gift, then respect your need for that financial boundary and
Yeah,
don't do it. It is
absolutely.
okay to, make everyone like homemade loaves of banana bread
Yes.
and give a card and
Yes.
say, happy holidays and you are loved and happy Thanksgiving or whatever it is. You don't have to go beyond your, you know, budget or whatever it is that you've outlined for yourself to please others or to feel accepted into the holiday cheer, so to speak, because
Yeah,
that's
I
not
don't gifts are
fun.
not required. And if we can just put a full stop, gifts are not a requirement of holidays. Like
Yeah,
I am a
society just says
person,
it is.
I don't give a crap what society says about gifts. I would rather you take time out of your day
I
to
have never heard you
spend.
speak so passionately.
This fires me up because I'm so annoyed by it. It means more to me for you to spend your time with me than you to spend your money on me. Now, I am not
Perhaps
saying
your
that I
love language. Hello, love
Oh
languages.
yeah, yeah,
Quality
yeah. It
time over
totally
gift
comes
giving.
100% yes. I appreciate gifts. I like the thought that goes into gifts. Like this is not lost on me. However, it stresses me out to know that you are in financial hardship and for you to give me a gift that costs money. Like that
Yeah,
because that's not okay because I don't want you to
yeah,
feel pressured to do that. So
yeah.
then it spins in my head and it causes big problems. So
Yeah.
just
Well, you're
hang out
very
with me.
right. Yeah. Well, if only everyone could have such a mindset, but this is why it's important for us to treat ourselves with the level of compassion, respect, and boundaries that we deserve within so that
Yeah.
we can, then feel comfortable when we apply it to others. Because you're right. I mean, it's just there are boundaries that you have to learn how to respect for yourself first in order for you to really engage in that level of mastery with others.
Yeah.
Um, to kind of get to that sweet spot of what healthy boundaries actually are,
And
which,
now, see, here's the problem. Now I'm going to have to make banana bread this weekend, Lindsay, because you
oh,
said it and now it's stuck in my head.
only if I get a loaf, please.
Come on. I got you. Don't worry. I'll get the kids in the
Oh,
kitchen. It'll be great.
that's right. Keep them busy.
Very
Keep them
busy.
busy. hmm So, with that, I do want to touch on some healthy boundaries.
Yeah.
Just because I feel like even how we've talked in the past about like relationship red flags and very like very rarely do people actually talk about relationship green flags. I feel like the
Mm,
help,
that's
which
true. Yeah.
they exist, but likewise, I think that there's not enough communication about what healthy boundaries look like. What do they sound like? And how does one implement them? It's like, okay, no duh, of course, we all need healthy boundaries, but what do they look like and what do they sound like? So where do we start? So we start by just talking about what they are, because we know what they are not. We just went
True.
over what they are not.
Yes.
Yeah. They are not porous and they are not rigid. So, healthy boundaries are when we are selective with a level of discernment,
Mm.
wisdom, level of discernment. We are selective about who we let in and who we keep out.
I
Amber's
just
eyes
feel
just
like
got real big.
yes, because there's so many obligations, and I'm using the word obligations intentionally. I
Hmm.
have to be in this room with this person. I have to go to this function where this person is going to be here. And
Hmm.
um, someone shared with me the other day that they were walking into a season of spending time with people that made them uncomfortable with holidays because people come to the gathering, right? And this person's strategy going into it was, if ever I'm in a room and that person is there, I'll just make sure I'm not alone with that person. Or, I have a buddy set up to just tap me on the shoulder and then we'll exit the room together and go find somewhere else to be. And I was like, that's healthy because
Yeah.
you're recognizing, yes, I want to attend this function. I want to see the other people who are
Yep.
there, but
Yep.
this person I don't want to be close to me. I don't want to spend
Sure.
time with that person. And I thought that was
Yep.
a really healthy balance of
I
doing the
agree.
things.
Yeah, that's a wonderful example of like ways someone could implement a system and have that buddy system at play over, Thanksgiving or whatever. And likewise, something else is like it's okay for you to do something like bring an adult coloring book, bring your headphones,
Yeah.
bring something like I mean, seriously, and it might seem rude, but even if you need to pop in the bathroom for a second and listen to your favorite song to reset your energy, or bring an adult coloring book or something that you can like, or Sudoku or whatever,
Yeah.
crossword. So after dinner's over, you can just like sit there and be really into that, focus on that, where it's not personalized to another person. It's no
I'm
one's
a
gonna
big
take
fan
offense
of
to
going
it.
for a walk in those situations too. Like I'll excuse myself and just step
Yeah,
out and get some fresh air and just
yeah,
and I mean, at this
much,
point my family's very used to me doing things like that, which I
yeah.
appreciate because
Hmm.
it's nothing against them. I just tend to get overstimulated when there's a lot of people in an area. So I need to
Yeah,
take a
and
beat.
And frankly, I think especially after the isolation of the pandemic, I feel a
Mm,
lot of people are actually quite overstimulated and large crowds, or like just being around a bunch of people in general might be pretty anxiety provoking, in addition to the pre-existing anxiety that can come with the
yeah.
holidays. So that's super fair. Get out and take space, take a walk. Um, but also, just in terms of healthy boundaries and a person who has healthy boundaries, there's also that level of discernment with regard to trusting other people.
Mm,
So they take time to build trust and rapport. They're not oversharing right off the bat. They share information and disclose information, uh, personal information appropriately, like timing, right? They have a level of sense that goes into when it's
yeah.
appropriate to disclose within the context of that relationship.
Well, and it's you
Um,
can't, well, I don't want to make a definitive statement like that. I don't think it's healthy to isolate yourself from absolutely everyone. I believe it's very healthy to have a couple of people that you trust enough to be able to share with them, be able to open up and be able to
mhm.
like have that discussion of I'm uncomfortable,
Yep.
that may I don't want to talk about that right now, or I'd rather not go like you and I have that conversation all the time and you offer me,
Yep.
is this something you want to talk about further or are you sitting with it? And I always
Yep.
appreciate that because I'm like, yeah, sometimes I'm just sitting with it because I don't really know.
Yeah.
I don't have the words to say, but I need you to understand that there's this thing happening.
Yeah. And that's enough. And
Yeah.
I think sometimes this is where, individuals within their own discomfort, we've talked about this in the past, but how when a person is suffering, or if a person is in a state of discomfort of some kind or feeling uncomfortable of some kind, there's some people that can't handle that individual being in that middle way, is what we called it
Mm,
previously. So
yeah.
they listen to respond. They listen listen to fix. They listen to try to take control of that person's situation and get really involved in it, which is, again, if we're talking about healthy boundaries, an individual who practices healthy boundaries can support others without getting too involved. And I got to tell you, this is something that I historically in the past, I had a big problem with this. I had a big problem as a caregiver and as a
Yeah,
helper
absolutely.
of, people would come or say or share, and I would be the first one to say, how can I help you? Or what, maybe I
Hmm.
can do this, this isn't this, or let's problem solve, da, 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 da. And I'd be like, thinking, okay, they came to me because they need me to help them fix this problem. And it's like, no, Lindsay. Now, today, in today's times, I know, no, when people come to me, it's not because they're asking me to fix anything. If they want me to help them in problem solving, they will state that need for me to understand, and I can respond accordingly. And if they don't state the need, then I will voluntarily ask, are you asking me to support you in problem
Right.
solving right now? Um, Rather than me having this assumption and jumping right on in to offer unsolicited advice and problem
Right.
solving. And they're like, no, I really just needed
Yeah.
someone to listen. Like, I just
Right.
thank you for your intention. And I just wanted someone to listen.
Right.
Um, so even that, I would say because I am a therapist, I actually feel like that has required me to really learn how to set healthy boundaries of when I'm
Yes.
feeling like being a good listener is like, okay, well, to what extent am I going to keep listening to where this doesn't start feeling like a therapy session, where I can kind of set those boundaries now with a healthy level of understanding of my friend role versus a therapy role, so to speak. And if things start to teeter, then here, let me give you some information on how you can get some professional help. It sounds like this is a really complex issue.
Yeah. Well, and it's good to have those. It works on both sides, right? That boundary is respectful
Yeah.
to yourself. It's respectful to the other person in all of those scenarios that you just mentioned, because I I am guilty of it as well, and it's still something that I battle on a daily basis. If someone brings it up a problem to me, my very first
Mm.
instinct is, "Oh, I can fix that," or "I have some ideas on how that could be fixed," or, I
Yeah.
that's something I could do very easily. Like if someone is lamenting that they have a lot on their to-do list and,
Of
they
course.
like I'm like, "Oh, I can take that off of your plate." And
Yeah.
I have to coach myself to just like put my hands in my pocket for a minute because I'm like,
Bite your tongue, sit on your hands.
yeah, and it's not because I don't want to help, but it's because not everybody needs my help. Some people genuinely
Yeah.
are just like, "Man, today was a rough day," and they just need
Mhm.
someone to say, "Yes, you are
It
right.
was.
It was. Yep,
Yeah.
full stop."
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so that's just it. We learn to value our own opinions, other
Mm,
people's opinions. Like when you're in a healthy space and you're like even keeled with your boundaries, you can stand by your personal values and you can choose to adapt to others and hold space for where another person is with theirs without
mhm,
trying to push your um, inflexible approach to something. And the last piece with this, I would say, which we kind of touched on, is an individual with healthy boundaries is able to communicate assertively, n-
mm,
not aggressively,
mhm,
not passively, just assertively. And the reason why I want to emphasize that word choice is because I think when we get into gender roles, when a woman communicates assertively, aka I know my ass can be very assertive.
What? You? No way. Never
Yeah,
seen it.
I've been on all three ends of this. I've been passive aggressive, but I've definitely I've learned a few life lessons, and would say that I am very mindful in really trying to be assertive with my communication.
Mhm.
And I think that it's very easily misconstrued whenever it's a woman who is communicating assertively versus a man who is communicating assertively.
Yes, because a man communicating assertively is well-spoken and a clear communicator and knows
Respected,
what he needs and
powerful.
respected and powerful and all the things, but a woman is a bitch.
Ding, ding, ding.
I mean,
It's
call
so
a
true.
spade, right?
Yeah, I feel like when a woman uses assertive communication, and this is kind of, I do believe this is what kind of prevents certain people from choosing to step in that space of healthy
Yes.
boundaries, is because when you do learn how to set healthy boundaries and how to step into your own power around respecting yourself and what you need and how to express what you need, people don't like it very much.
Well,
They don't
boundaries
like it
make
very
people
much.
uncomfortable because then they have to think about how they're interacting with you. They have to
Hmm.
question their motives and their methods. And, if it's, I think there's a lot of trendy talk around boundaries now, and it can be misconstrued, but the
Hmm.
assertive portion of it is important because you're allowed to stand up straight. You are allowed to clearly
Yeah.
communicate your needs, and that is a blessing to you and the people around you.
Amen. No
Clear
is
is
a complete
kind, Brene
sentence.
Brown.
That's right. Yes. Yeah, clear is
Mhm.
kind. And no is a complete sentence. I can
Mhm.
say no without offering an explanation and a circular conversation to explain all my reasoning. I can simply say no. No, thank
Mhm.
you.
No, thank
Period.
you.
And
Yeah.
being that direct and straightforward might make people think a certain kind of way about me or what I'm saying, but at the end of the day, if my need is to say no, then so be it. If the people around me cannot tolerate that, then they're probably not the people that need to be in my
Yeah.
tribe.
Well, and this goes for declining social events, right?
Hmm.
This goes
Yes.
for
I mean,
I
weddings, baby showers, holidays. I mean, we can get into all of that, but yes, it
mm,
is okay to say no. I
yeah.
didn't, well, okay. Oh, wait, I just had to think that one through. I was about to say, Amber, I didn't go to your wedding, but then I was like, yeah, wait. Okay,
I didn't invite
next.
Lindsay to my wedding.
I just now remembered that, but I really was just
Oh,
speaking,
that's
shooting from the
funny.
hip with that one,
I
and then I remembered, wait.
And now I have a
That's
full
right.
blush because I truly didn't. And it was, we
So
weren't
I really
friends,
did
right?
not mean to call you out on that. That was not. That's just
Listen,
like
we have not been secretive about our history of challenges, right? It's
I
not a big
literally.
secret. Hey,
That was so funny. I did
bless.
not. I just was about to be like, yeah, I didn't go to your wedding,
I
but then
love
I'm
you
like,
too,
oh
Lindsay.
wait, I
See,
didn't.
yet another
I didn't invite you to
example.
my wedding either.
No. Yet another example. Clearly, we do not script these episodes. We're grateful for y'all hanging out with us as we go down the random foxholes and paint ourselves into embarrassing corners like this one.
Oh, my eyes are teary. That was so,
Your eyes are leaking. Um,
so
oh,
funny. Sorry,
hilarious.
Amber.
But I share that because I used to be the person who accepted every single invitation to every single social gathering because I, one, was like, oh, they like me, they want to see me. And two, I was petrified of telling anybody no because I was afraid they'd be angry with me. So,
Mm,
what this ended up looking like was Amber double, triple, and quadruple booking and having to book her happy ass from like 7 events in a day and being
yeah,
completely emotionally and physically and mentally exhausted.
yeah.
To now, I no longer do that, and I am grateful that I no longer do that because I don't know if it is old age or wisdom. More than 2 events in a day, count me out.
Maybe
Count me
both.
out.
I don't know. I feel like you do awesome. I mean, I give you mad props. You are great at juggling stuff like that and maintaining a healthy balance of a social life. Kids do that too. You know, they keep you were volunteering at Hazel School and all that stuff. But yes, and that's just it. It goes back to, is this an obligation or is this something I want to
Or
do
is it
because
something you
it's
want to do?
fun?
And also, spoiler alert and a secret, I schedule time where nobody else can book time with me. So I might decline a social event because
Oh,
I have booked a date with myself. And that date may just be
love it.
sitting on the couch. Like, but
That
I
is
don't know.
great.
I show up to those quote unquote meetings because I
Hmm.
am an important person too. So just like if Lindsay said, hey, I want you to go do this thing with me, like I would view that as a very important on my calendar, and my time with myself also very important on my calendar.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
Yep.
that's something I had to set as a boundary with myself because I like going and hanging out with people. I like seeing people, but I also have to make space to be by myself.
Yeah, I
Otherwise, I
love
am not a fun
canceling.
person to be around.
I was gonna say I love canceling plans. It's like my favorite.
I do not love canceling plans.
Oh man, but again, I think this comes with the procrastination side of me.
It's
I'm
true.
like, okay, I'm okay with like if it doesn't go through, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Maybe this is why we mesh so well nowadays.
One of the
But
many reasons.
that's right.
I'm
That's
no
right.
longer afraid of you like trying to steal my man. It helps.
Oh my gosh. I love the direction that this episode has gone in.
Uh,
Woo! Yep,
gosh,
that just
fun.
happened.
It did.
Nope.
Yes.
We're gonna just keep it on, going back to the guide to healthy boundaries.
Well, and it is
So
important. This is a good time of year to talk about boundaries. You're going to
it
see a
is.
lot of people talking about boundaries right now because it is trendy and it is important. I
But the
want to
follow through.
caution, yes. That was exactly it, someone explained it to me like this. You can take in a bunch of helpful information and you can constantly take it in, listen, learn, whatever. Until you do something with it, until you wring out that sponge and put it into action, it is just something else that's circling in your brain, providing white noise. So I
Hmm.
would challenge you to pick something that we have shared today and implement it if it resonates with you. If nothing we
Yeah.
shared resonates, seek out more information and find something that works for you.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Going
Yes.
into
Yes.
the season
Yes.
without healthy boundaries is not an option.
Yep. I just want to read through like a couple of examples of
Yeah,
just what
please.
healthy boundaries can sound like with family members specifically. Just because as I think about Thanksgiving, I mean, I always think so just the timing of Thanksgiving and it always being around election year. And then people are like, oh, I just hope we don't get into politics. I hope we don't get into religion. I hope we don't get into all these things. So I just want to
Yeah.
mention like a few different statements that individuals can make so that they can politely set a boundary with the family or the family members when these things come up. So, it's just quick five. I won't spend too much time on it. But number one, I would not like you to talk about that right now.
Mm.
Period. Complete sentence. That's it.
Or I would change that one a little bit to I would not like to talk about that right now because I think sometimes
Yes, that's
we can
fair.
have trouble. It's not my job to control what you talk about.
Mm. Yes,
But like I'm also
I
not going to
told.
engage in the conversation.
Yep, absolutely. I
Yeah.
completely agree. When people hear you, it definitely can set off the alarm bells of like, well, I'm going to attack you back. That's true.
Right. Because in my mind, I'm like, that one, you may set yourself up for some not so fun, like
Yeah.
some more
Well,
stress.
in my brain, I'm also thinking about like individual one-on-one encounters. Maybe if you're, I know personally speaking, I've totally been the person where it's like pulled aside in the kitchen and someone wants to bring up something, and I'll say, I would like for you to not talk about this right now, or I'm not
That's
going to
fair too.
engage in
Yeah.
this right now. So I think, context and how it plays out is always, important to take into consideration.
Yeah, for sure.
But number two is I appreciate your input, but I've made my decision.
I love that one.
Hmm.
Unsolicited advice is my favorite.
Yeah, I appreciate your input, but I've made my decision.
Hmm.
Number three, I expect my partner and I to be treated with respect, or we won't attend family functions any longer.
Yep.
Well,
Fair.
that's a bold statement to make, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's a hard, bold statement to make, and it's okay for you to say it.
Yes.
Hmm. Number four, that compromise isn't fair to me. Let's discuss other options.
I like that.
Hmm. I do too. I do too, because it's not a diss to a person, but you're also speaking up for your needs.
Well, and
You
we've
might
all been in
need
that
something else.
conversation where a compromise is offered that's not really a compromise. And you're
Yeah,
like,
not at all. Like, yeah, no, this is not equal at all.
no, no.
Right. And then lastly, number five, I will no longer be the middle person in family arguments. I will
Yes.
no longer be the middle person in family arguments.
Yes.
I got to tell you, that was probably one of the most powerful boundaries I've had to set in my life. And it was not received well. And you know
Mm.
what? That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. I will not be the middle person in the family arguments. Nope.
Yeah, you
I'm
don't
gonna
have to
just
like it, but it's the truth.
distract myself. Yep. So yeah, it's just I'm not gonna be that. I'm not gonna be the
Yeah.
family mediator. You guys got to sort it out, guys. Sorry.
Yeah. Well,
It's
and
just
so I listened to this list, and part of my brain, that perfectionist tendency, I want to caution and share, like, you're not going to nail these perfectly. It's never going to be perfect. We're looking for progress. We're looking for more opportunities that
yeah,
bring you joy, less
yeah,
opportunities that create stress. So you don't have to establish every single boundary in the next, 6 days, but pick something that feels good and
yeah.
allows you to enjoy the season a little bit more.
Yes, enjoy the have learn to have fun. Learn to
Mhm.
have fun, learn to be present and enjoy what the season was designed to be in the first place. Which, again, as a reminder, you get to choose your family. You get to
Mhm.
choose who you want to spend your time with. And if there are people, places, or things that are feeling like an obligation, now might be a great time to take a step back, reevaluate how important is it for you to engage in said obligation versus protecting your personal peace.
Mic drop. All of the snaps, like, yes to that.
Yeah. This has been a great conversation. I'm glad that we could talk about this because this is just ultimately the time of year where I feel like we got to get the conversation started, and I know that we're going to have plenty more episodes and topics that kind of loop back into these same kind of things,
Yeah.
but for starters, I would say after this episode, I would encourage you to sort of reflect. Are you the person that has porous boundaries? Are you the person that's more rigid in nature and very
Mhm.
inflexible with your boundaries? And how are those choices influencing your quality of life?
Absolutely. I love that. That's such a great takeaway from this episode, and I enjoyed this. You always bring, a very different perspective to the table, which we laugh about a lot of times off air and off screen, because Lindsay and I can read the same thing and glean two entirely different ideas from it, which is my favorite.
I love it. I mean, our brains work so differently. I love it
Oh,
though. I absolutely love it.
it's good stuff. Well, thank you so much, Lindsay. Always a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you,
And
Amber. It's always a
yeah,
pleasure to talk to you too.
and
For
thanks to
our
all the
lovely,
listeners. We're so
yes.
grateful for you. We ask you to please continue to like, share, and follow. We're on Instagram, we're on Snapchat, we're on YouTube, Facebook, and even TikTok, y'all. So find us on your preferred platform,
Yep.
and
And
stick
we're
around.
also in, yep, we're also in the show notes as well, just to keep things simple, easy to find.
Yeah.
Click on our show notes. And in that case, we'll just see you next Tuesday.
See you next Tuesday.
It's a wrap.
Bye, y'all.
And we all sing, everything is gonna be just fine. It's gonna fall into place. The sun is gonna set on your terrible day.